Picture this. The table is set beautifully. Turkey in the center, candles glowing, my mom's famous pecan pie cooling on the counter. 30 people I love, gathered under one roof for Thanksgiving. And then, right there, between the mashed potatoes and the gravy, my husband of 7 years pushes back his chair, looks at me, and says the words that shattered every single thing I believed in. He wasn't just leaving me, he was leaving me for my sister. The sister who was sitting 3 seats away from me at that same table, and as I sat frozen in my chair, the whole room silent. I made one phone call the next morning that changed everything. This is my story, and I need you to hear every single word of it. My name is Lily, and I want you to understand something before we get into any of this. I was not a naive woman. I was not somebody who walked through life with blinders on. I was a 34-year-old woman, with a career I built from the ground up, a home I decorated with my own hands, and a marriage I genuinely believed was the realest thing in my world. I grew up in a small town in rural Tennessee, one of those towns where everybody knows your family name before they know yours. My parents were high school sweethearts. My dad coached Little League. My mom baked casseroles for every funeral and every baby shower in a 20-mile radius. We were that family, the kind people pointed at and said, "Now that's how you raise children right." There were 3 of us kids. Me, the oldest, then my brother Ray, and then my sister Cassie. Cassie was 4 years younger than me, and from the day she was born, everybody made a big deal out of how beautiful she was. Big green eyes, naturally golden hair, the kind of effortless smile that made strangers stop and comment. And I want to be clear, I never resented her for that, not once. I loved my sister, deeply, completely, the way only a big sister can. We shared a bedroom until I left for college. We stayed up too late whispering about boys and dreams and what we wanted our lives to look like. She was my first best friend. Before I had anyone else, I had Cassie. And I want you to hold on to that, because it matters. Now I met my husband, I'll call him Grant, when I was 26. He was 29. Tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of man who fixed things without being asked and remembered how you took your coffee without ever writing it down. He was working in construction management at the time, and I was a marketing coordinator for a regional healthcare company. We met at a mutual friend's cookout. He brought a 12-pack and I brought homemade jalapeno deviled eggs, and we stood by the cooler for 3 hours talking like we'd known each other our whole lives. By 6 months in, I knew he was it for me. We dated for 2 years. He proposed on a Tuesday, not some grand romantic gesture, just the 2 of us in our kitchen making breakfast. And he just looked at me and said, "I don't want to spend another day not knowing you're going to be my wife." I said yes before he even finished the sentence. We got married in May. Outdoor ceremony, string lights, wildflowers everywhere, my dad crying through his whole speech. It was perfect. Every bit of it. And Cassie? She was my maid of honor. She stood right beside me at that altar. She held my bouquet when Grant slipped the ring on my finger. She gave a toast at the reception that had the whole room laughing and crying at the same time. I looked at her that night and thought, I am the luckiest woman alive. A good man, a good family, a good life. I had no idea what was already growing in the dark. For the first 3 years of our marriage, everything was genuinely good. Grant got promoted. I moved into a senior marketing role. We bought our house, a little craftsman bungalow with a big front porch and a backyard that needed serious work. We spent entire weekends out there together, planting things, building a garden bed, just being in the same space and feeling content. We talked about kids. We weren't in a rush, but we both wanted them. We had the names picked out. We had the conversations about how we'd raise them. It all felt so real and so close. Cassie, meanwhile, was going through a rougher time. She'd been in a relationship for 3 years that ended badly. Her boyfriend at the time had cheated on her, and it broke something in her. She moved back to Tennessee from Atlanta, where she'd been living, and started spending a lot more time with our parents, which also meant more time around us. And I welcomed that. I genuinely did. I brought her into our home like it was her safe place, too. She came over for dinners, She and Grant would watch football together when I was working late. She and I would have long Saturday morning coffees on that front porch. I thought I was being a good sister. I thought Grant was being a good brother-in-law. What I didn't understand, what I couldn't have imagined, was that somewhere between those late nights and those shared meals and all that closeness, something was forming between them that had nothing to do with family. Looking back, I can see the signs now, and they absolutely got me. The way Grant started mentioning Cassie more in conversation. Not in an obvious way, just casually. Cassie said the funniest thing today. Or, Cassie texted me that restaurant recommendation, you should check it out. At the time, I thought it was sweet. I thought, good. My two favorite people actually have a real bond. I remember once I came home, and they were sitting on the back porch together, both of them laughing at something on his phone. They didn't hear me come in, and when I stepped outside and said, hey, there was just this half second, this tiny little pause, before everything went back to normal. I filed it away and forgot about it. I hate that I did that. There was also a shift in Grant himself that I attributed to stress. He became slightly more distant around year 4 of our marriage, less talkative at the end of the day. He'd go to bed earlier. He stopped reaching for my hand as much. I brought it up gently. I said, are we okay? It feels like there's some distance between us. He told me I was overthinking. That work was just hard right now. He kissed me on the forehead and said, we're fine, Lily. I love you. And I believed him, because why wouldn't I? This was Grant, the man who proposed over scrambled eggs because he just couldn't wait another day. Now let me take you to that Thanksgiving. It was a Wednesday night when everyone started arriving. My parents' house, the same house I grew up in. My mom had been cooking for 2 days straight. The smell of it hit you the second you pulled into the driveway. Sage and butter and sweet potato and that specific warmth that only exists in a house full of people who love each other. My aunts and uncles were there. My cousins. My grandparents on my mom's side. My brother Ray and his wife and their 2 little ones. Close family friends who'd been coming to Thanksgiving at my parents' house for 20 years. And Cassie, of course. She arrived about an hour after us. She walked in with a bottle of wine and a cranberry salad, and she hugged me so tight, told me I looked amazing, and I just felt happy. Genuinely happy. To be there. To be surrounded by all these people I loved. To have my husband standing in the kitchen with my dad talking football. To have my sister's arm around my shoulder. I remember thinking that exact thought. I am so grateful. Dinner started around 5. We pushed 3 tables together in the dining room. That's how many people there were. My mom and her sisters had cooked enough food to feed a small country. The kids were loud. The adults were louder. My grandfather said grace, and it went on for 4 full minutes, and everyone kept their heads bowed and their eyes closed even when their stomachs were growling. And then we ate. It was beautiful. The first 45 minutes of that meal were genuinely beautiful. Stories were being told. My little niece knocked over her juice and nobody even got upset. My uncle was making everyone laugh with some story about a fishing trip gone wrong. I was halfway through my turkey when I noticed it. Grant and Cassie were sitting kind of angled toward each other, not touching, not obviously anything. But there was something in the body language. Something quiet and tight and private. And I don't know what made me look right then. Some instinct. Some deep cellular level warning I had been ignoring for months. I watched Grant say something to Cassie under the table noise. Just a few words, and Cassie's jaw tightened, and she looked down at her plate. And Grant looked up, and he looked right at me, and I knew. I don't know how to fully explain it. But in that fraction of a second, something in my stomach just dropped completely out of my body. It was like the floor fell through, like gravity stopped working, like my whole chest just caved in. I set down my fork. The table was still loud. My aunt was in the middle of a story. The kids were still eating. My mom was pouring more sweet tea, and Grant cleared his throat. He actually cleared his throat. And he said, and I need you to understand that the table slowly went quiet as he started speaking, because something in his tone made everyone stop. He said, I need to say something. And I need to say it here because I've been carrying it too long and I can't keep pretending. My mom stopped pouring. My dad turned slowly from the end of the table. I couldn't breathe. Grant didn't look at me when he said the next part. He looked at the tablecloth, and he said, "Lily, I'm not in love with you anymore. I haven't been for a long time. And I'm in love with Cassie. There's been something between us, and I know this is wrong. And I know this is the worst possible way to say this. But I can't sit here and pretend anymore." Complete silence. The kind of silence that has weight to it, that presses down on you. I heard my niece whisper, "Mommy," to my sister-in-law. I heard my grandmother make a sound, just one small broken sound. I looked at Cassie. She had her hands in her lap and her head down, and her eyes were closed. She didn't look shocked. That was the part that finished me. She didn't look shocked, because she already knew what he was going to say. I didn't cry right away. I think I was too deep in shock for that. I just sat there looking at this man I had built 7 years of my life with, and at my sister sitting 3 seats away. And I felt this profound, total, devastating aloneness. My dad stood up first. He said Grant's name in a voice I had never heard come out of my father before. My brother Ray was already on his feet. Grant stood up. Cassie stood up. And in front of my entire family, on Thanksgiving, they walked out of my parents' house together. The door closed. And then I cried. I don't remember everything about that night clearly. I know my mom held me for a long time. I know my dad sat on the porch steps alone for a while, and I could see his shoulders shaking. I know my aunt took the kids upstairs so they wouldn't see the adults completely fall apart. I remember going to the bathroom and sitting on the cold tile floor in the dark for I don't know how long. Just sitting there. Replaying everything. Every dinner. Every shared laugh. Every moment I had brought Cassie into my home, my marriage, my life, and trusted her completely. 7 years with Grant, 29 years with Cassie, both gone, in one sentence, at a Thanksgiving table. My brother Ray sat outside the bathroom door. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he just said, "I'm right here." That broke me all over again. I stayed at my parents' that night. I couldn't go back to that house. Our house. The one with the porch and the garden, and the names we'd picked out for children we were never going to have together now. I lay in my childhood bedroom, the one I used to share with Cassie, and stared at the ceiling until almost 4 a.m. I thought about everything I had missed, or ignored, or explained away. I thought about the way Grant had looked at me before he spoke, and I had already known. That fraction of a second before the words came. My body had understood what my heart hadn't been ready to accept. And I thought about Cassie. About how she had sat there, head down, hands in her lap, waiting for him to say it. Which meant she had known he was going to say it. Which meant they had talked about it. Which meant this was a decision they had made, together. And somehow in all those conversations, not once had either of them picked up a phone and called me first. Not once. I was an afterthought in my own marriage. I was an afterthought to my own sister. I woke up at 6:47 a.m. the next morning. My eyes were swollen. My head was pounding. And I just lay there for a moment letting the previous night settle back over me like a heavy blanket. Then I picked up my phone. I had 17 missed texts, several missed calls, a voicemail from Cassie, which I did not listen to. Not then. But there was one call I needed to make. One person I needed to talk to before I did anything else. Her name was Patricia. She was the best family law attorney in the county, and she also happened to go to church with my mother. I had her number saved because she had helped my cousin through a difficult situation 2 years prior. I called her at 6:52 in the morning the day after Thanksgiving. And God bless that woman. She picked up. I told her everything. Fast and broken and not in any logical order. She listened without interrupting. And when I was done, she said very calmly, "Honey, don't touch anything in that house. Don't move any finances. Don't sign anything. And come see me Monday morning first thing." That phone call was the first breath I had taken since Grant pushed back that chair. It was the beginning of me deciding that I was not going to disappear into this. Monday morning, I met with Patricia. And what I learned over the following days and weeks, through the legal process and through conversations I never wanted to have, was even more devastating than what had happened at that table. Grant and Cassie had been seeing each other for over a year. A year! 12 months of holidays, family dinners, shared weekends, all of it. They had been lying to my face for 12 months. I found out that Cassie had not just stayed in our home as a grieving, heartbroken little sister recovering from her own bad relationship. She had used that access. She had cultivated something with my husband while I was at work, while I was traveling for business, while I was doing the grocery shopping and the laundry and all the invisible daily labor of keeping a life running. There were messages eventually. I didn't go looking for them at first, but some things come out during legal proceedings whether you want them to or not. And reading them was like being hurt all over again, in a completely new and specific way. They talked about me. Not cruelly, necessarily. But they talked about me the way people talk about someone they've already moved past. Like I was a logistical problem they were managing. Like I was the last thing standing between them and the life they wanted. I had been the obstacle in my own marriage. My parents were devastated in a way I had never seen them before. My mom, who was the warmest, most steady woman I knew, went through a grief that was almost physical. She told me once, sitting at the kitchen table, "I don't know how to love both of you right now." And that's a sentence I never thought I'd say about my own children. My dad barely spoke for weeks. When he did, it was careful and measured, like he was holding something very large and very dangerous very tightly inside himself. Ray was furious, protective in the way only big brothers and younger brothers who adore their sisters can be. He wanted to fix it, and he couldn't, and that made him angrier. And through all of it, I had to keep getting up, going to work, answering emails, being a functional human being while my entire personal world had been destroyed at a dinner table on a holiday. Patricia was extraordinary. She was methodical and calm, and she never let me get lost in the emotion when we were sitting across from each other in her office. But she also never once made me feel like the emotion was wrong. Tennessee is an equitable distribution state, meaning marital assets are divided fairly, not necessarily 50-50. We had the house, joint savings, Grant's retirement account that had been building during our marriage. My name was on everything that mattered. I did not want to punish Grant financially out of bitterness, but I was not going to walk away from 7 years of my life with nothing. I had contributed to that household, financially, emotionally, physically. I had helped him get to where he was professionally by being the stable foundation at home. That counted. Patricia made sure it counted. The divorce took 8 months. 8 months of paperwork and mediation, and a few moments where I sat in Patricia's parking lot after meetings and just let myself cry in my car before I drove home. Grant, to his credit, and I say this with complicated feelings, did not fight me on much. I think somewhere in him, there was enough decency to recognize that he had done something irreparable. He didn't try to minimize it. He didn't drag it out. I got the house. I got a fair split of everything else. I got my life back, legally at least. The emotional part took a lot longer. Cassie tried to reach me several times in those early months. Texts, a letter, an actual handwritten letter that my mom forwarded to me because Cassie had sent it to the house. I read it once. She said she was sorry. She said she hadn't planned for it to happen. She said she loved me and that she hated herself for the pain she had caused. She said she understood if I never wanted to talk to her again. I folded that letter back up, put it in a drawer, and I didn't respond. Because here's what I needed Cassie to understand, and what I couldn't explain without breaking completely open. It was never just about Grant. Grant was my husband, and losing him was devastating. But losing Cassie was something different, something older and deeper. She was the person who had known me my entire life, who had been in every chapter, who had stood at my wedding and held my flowers and cried happy tears, and told the room full of people how much she loved her big sister. You can fall out of love with a husband. I understand that. Hearts change. Relationships break down. Those things happen. But you don't get to do what she did and call it an accident. An accident is a slip. A mistake you catch yourself in. What they did was a choice, made over and over again, for a year. Every single day that they looked me in the eyes and said nothing. That is not an accident. That is a decision. And I could not, and still cannot, and pretend otherwise. I am going to tell you something that I wish someone had told me in those first terrible months. Healing is not linear. It does not move in one clean direction from broken to whole. It circles back. It doubles over on itself. Some days you wake up and you feel like a person again. Like your lungs work and your feet are under you, and you might actually be okay. And then some random Tuesday you're in the grocery store and a song comes on, and you are right back at that Thanksgiving table, frozen, fork halfway to your mouth, watching your world fall apart. Both things are real. Both things are okay. I started therapy in January, about 6 weeks after the divorce proceedings began. My therapist, who I will call Dr. Fields because she deserves to be mentioned even in disguise, was the kind of person who asked questions I didn't realize I needed to answer. She asked me, "What do you want your life to look like? Not what you're recovering from. What are you moving toward?" And I sat there for a long time, because I realized that for years I had framed my life around us, our house, our plan, our future. And now that the hour was gone, I genuinely didn't know what I, alone, wanted. That was scary, but it was also quietly, unexpectedly, freeing. I started painting. I had done it in college and dropped it completely when life got busy. I bought some canvas and some cheap acrylics, and I started just making color on a surface, not caring what it looked like, just putting something outward that had been trapped inward. I started running. Not obsessively, not as punishment, just as a way to be in my body and be outside and feel like I was moving somewhere, even on the days when emotionally I was standing completely still. I leaned into my friendships in a way I hadn't in years. Because if I'm honest, and I am, because that's the only way this story is worth telling, I had let some of those friendships thin out during my marriage. Not intentionally. Just the quiet, gradual way that happens when you're building a life with someone, and you stop tending other gardens as carefully. My friends showed up. They showed up in the way that makes you realize exactly who people are when everything is stripped away. Now, you came here for the full story, and I'm going to give it to you. Because the thing about justice is, it doesn't always look like what you imagined when you were sitting on a cold bathroom floor at 2 a.m, hoping that somehow, some way, the universe was paying attention. Sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's slow, and sometimes it looks a whole lot like consequence catching up to the people who earned it. Grant and Cassie moved in together in early spring, about 4 months after Thanksgiving. I heard this through my brother, who heard it from my parents. I didn't ask for the information, but I received it. And here is what I know about what came after. Not because I was watching, not because I was tracking them, but because in small towns and in families, things have a way of surfacing whether you want them to or not. Their relationship, built entirely on secrecy and betrayal, struggled almost immediately once it was in the open air. What burns hot and secret does not always survive in daylight. The guilt, Cassie's especially, was significant. She had to look at our parents, who were trying to love both their daughters, while holding this enormous fracture between them. She had to sit in the reality of what she had done, every single day, without the adrenaline of hiding it anymore. Grant, for his part, discovered that the man he had been was not who he wanted to be. He told my brother, not in a confrontational way, just in a quiet moment between the two of them, that he regretted the way it had happened. Not vaguely, specifically. He said, "I should have been honest with Lily first. What we did to her was wrong. I knew it was wrong every single day, and I kept doing it anyway. That's going to be with me for a long time." Ray told me that. He asked if I wanted to know, and I said yes. And I sat with those words for a while. They weren't enough to fix anything, but they were real. As for me, My justice was different. My justice was the house I still wake up in every morning. The career I never paused for a single day. The painting on my living room wall that I made myself, bright and imperfect, and completely mine. The Thursday morning runs. The friendships that deepened. The woman looking back at me in the mirror, who went through something that should have destroyed her. And didn't. My justice was realizing I was going to be okay. Not in spite of what happened, but somehow, strangely, through it. I have to be honest about the part that still doesn't have a resolution, because I refuse to wrap this up in a bow that doesn't exist. My relationship with Cassie is unresolved. We have been in the same room twice since Thanksgiving. Once at a family event I couldn't avoid, and once when our grandfather had a health scare, and we were both at the hospital at the same time. Both times were quiet and civil, and full of an enormous unsaid weight. She looks different. Smaller, somehow. Not physically, but something in her carries differently now. I don't hate her. I want to be clear about that. I don't hate my sister. But I don't know how to trust her. And without trust, I don't know what sisterhood looks like. I don't know if it can be rebuilt. I don't know if I'm capable of it yet. I don't know if she's earned it. What I do know is that I'm not going to force a reconciliation for the sake of making other people comfortable. My parents want us whole again. I understand that. I love them for wanting it. But I also know that what broke between Cassie and me is not something that heals on anyone else's timeline. Maybe someday, maybe, but not yet. It has been just over a year since that Thanksgiving. I am still in the house. And I know some people would say sell it, start fresh, don't live in a space full of that history. And I understand that. But I also spent 2 years making that house mine before Grant ever moved in. And I'll be honest with you. I wasn't going to let him take that too. I repainted the bedroom. I redid the garden by myself over the summer, sweating in the July heat with dirt under my fingernails and a podcast in my ears. I planted things. Things that grow slowly and stubbornly and don't need much, which felt like exactly the right energy. I got a dog. His name is Colonel, and he is a 70-pound golden doodle who thinks he is a lapdog, and he has done more for my healing than I can adequately explain. I went back to painting seriously. I actually sold 2 pieces this year. Small ones to people I know, but still. Something I made. Something that came out of all that pain. Given to someone who thought it was beautiful. I don't have words for what that felt like. I'm not in a relationship. I'm not looking for one yet. And for the first time in a long time, that doesn't feel like a hole in my life. It feels like space. Clean, open, chosen space. I am still in therapy. I still have hard days. I still sometimes wake up at 3 a.m. and feel the weight of it. But the weight is lighter now. And I am stronger now. And those 2 things together mean I'm carrying it differently. Music becomes reflective, gentle. I've thought a lot about what I want you to take from this story. And here's what I keep coming back to. The person who sits across from you at every holiday table, who knows your history, who was there for your firsts, who you would trust with anything. That person can still be capable of betrayal. Not because people are evil, but because people are complicated and weak sometimes, and capable of making choices that hurt the people who love them most. And knowing that, really understanding that, is not a reason to close yourself off from love or family or trust. It's a reason to pay attention, to trust your instincts, to value yourself enough to listen when something feels wrong, even when you desperately want it to be wrong about being wrong. I ignored those signs. I explained them away. I loved Grant, and I loved Cassie, and I didn't want the truth that my gut was slowly assembling to be real. So I chose not to look at it. I'm not blaming myself for what they chose to do. That is on them, fully. But I am responsible for the woman I want to be going forward. And that woman pays attention. That woman trusts herself. That woman knows that she can survive the unsurvivable, because she already has. If you are sitting somewhere right now in the middle of your own worst chapter, I want you to hear me say this directly to you. You will get to the other side of it, not untouched, not unchanged, but alive, and more yourself than you've ever been. The table gets set again. Life keeps moving, and you get to decide who sits down with you next time. Now I want to ask you something, and I mean this sincerely. If you were me, could you ever let your sister back in? Is some betrayal too deep to come back from? Or do you believe that family can survive anything if both people are willing? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. If this story moved you, if it made you feel seen, or gave you something to hold on to, please share it with someone who needs it today. Subscribe to Velyra Payback for a new story every single day. Every story is real. Every story matters. And I will see you tomorrow.